Hey everybody, welcome to today's Wink. I'm on the road today because I am going down to Richmond. I'm actually outside of Richmond for an event, and so I thought I'd stop the car, get out and get on the old video here and talk to you about today's What You Need to Know. Let's see here, I've got phone things coming in. I don't know if that'll throw me off. Sorry about that. Today's Wink, What You Need to Know. You know, today, the reason I'm headed to Richmond, it's the birthday celebration of James Monroe, the nation's 5th president. And one thing that I don't think people quite realize is how important James Monroe was in our nation's history. He was the last founding father to play a public role because he was the youngest. You know, he was just in his late teens when he was with George Washington at Valley Forge and in the early part of the War for Independence. And then he went on to serve in every conceivable way. His life's history is amazing. However, coming up a year from now, it will be the 200th anniversary of the Monroe Doctrine. And in the last about 30 years, there has been a movement to speak clearly about the continuing validity of the Monroe Doctrine. Now, the Monroe Doctrine, in early December 1823, Monroe went to Congress, and in a 2-hour presentation, he updated Congress on what was happening. It was kind of the state of the state, early December 1823. But within that, he spoke about how he and the nation, America, was shutting off from the rest of the world, the hemisphere, to stop the systems, he called it the systems of government from Europe and Russia, actually, from coming to our country and colonizing. This had been an ongoing battle, you know, for the early part of our nation. It was, so again, it's 1823. You're just talking about, less than 5 decades from the founding of the nation. So it's early days. There's lots of wars and battles over territory. There's things going on. There has been the Louisiana Purchase. Monroe played a big role in that. And so here we are, and he says the Monroe Doctrine, he says, don't come into our hemisphere because we don't want your systems. Your systems are incompatible with ours. Don't try to colonize here. And over the next couple of hundred years, till the next year will be 200, the question of the continuing validity of the Monroe Doctrine, I don't know if could it be more important? Because the question is kind of an America First question. The question is, when is it okay for the Chinese regime to put into Latin America all kinds of roads and infrastructure and satellite systems? When is that system, Chinese communism, incompatible with America? Well, it is right now. And so here's the really interesting question. As we're gonna see in the next couple of years, because I'm going to be a leader on it. We're going to see a celebration, a commemoration, and a reinvigoration of the Monroe Doctrine, which is going to be based on our nation's self-interest and why we would limit the infiltration into our nation or into our interests, I'd say it better that way, of systems we don't agree with. And the ultimate one is actually, and we talked about it earlier the week on the radio show, is the question of space. And while I'm at it, by the way, Brandon Weichert, We the Brandon on Twitter, at We the Brandon on Twitter. Brandon Weichert's got a book on space, Republic Book Publishers. It's great. And that reminds me, follow me on Twitter. If you're watching this video, somebody might have forwarded or whatever, do follow me on Twitter, at Eagle Ed Martin, and share this video and like it. But space is where we have to say, who's going to have control of space and whose system is going to dominate in space is going to be who rules the world. See, the thing about America is we've always been able to say we want to have America, we want to have our American sovereignty. We're not going to make an empire in the rest of the world. Now, I know there's people sitting out there saying, "Oh, but wait, you're fighting wars in all these places. Your commercial success is dominating." There's a conversation to be had, but generally, as a matter of nationhood and statehood, we have not been seeking to overtake and overcome other nations. We just haven't done it. We haven't wanted to do it. The question is going to be what is our vision for space? Is there a Monroe Doctrine for space where we say to the communist regime in China, to the Russians, in space, we're not going to allow this, or this? We may have to do it, and we may have to do it fast, because whoever controls space, you know, the argument about a World War III the conversation about a World War III is, and you hear Brandon Weichert talk about it regularly, is, he'll write about it, is if the if the Russians, or more likely if the Chinese regime takes out the satellites, takes out space, they can cripple. The first battle will be in space. The first battle to control the world will be in space. And if we're not aware of it, if we're not saying this is the rules we're going to demand in space, we're going to lose out. We're going to lose out dramatically. So the Monroe Doctrine, it's great to celebrate these founding fathers. James Monroe had an extraordinary life. He came from relative humble beginnings. His father had a big farm, a relatively big farm, but he wasn't one of these great plantation or planters in Virginia. And then Monroe really made his way extraordinarily throughout his long life and had a great success. So the Monroe Doctrine, watch for it coming up. And what you need to know is we better have some sense of the seriousness of the Monroe Doctrine, America First, what it means to understand our sovereignty, understand the limits of the intrusion of the world, but also understand how we can't sit back and pretend that it's okay for the communist regime in China to dominate space. If they dominate space, they're dominating us. They don't have to put a nuclear missile site in Cuba anymore if they dominate us in space. We've got to be aware of that. We got to be aware of that, and we got to adjust our mindset to that. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years in terms of that historic doctrine. And, as you watch the war in Ukraine, you watch the war in Syria, you watch the war in Yemen, and you come back to it and you say, what is the vision that the American military and the civilian leadership is describing to us as how we're going to function? What's that mission? And if we're not as clear as the Monroe Doctrine was, we're muddling it up. And the muddling, as I've said before on my radio show, you can drive Archduke Ferdinand around town in an open carriage, and you're inviting a real possibility that a spark could ignite a world war. And man alive, we don't want that to happen. So thanks for tuning in. Listen, do me a favor, share this, like this, follow me on Twitter at EagleEdMartin. Go to proamericareport.com and sign up for the daily email, the Daily Wink, because that's what you need to know. Talk again soon. Happy birthday, James Monroe.